This is the Ink, Pray, Love podcast. We talk all things health, wealth, and community connection. Let's go. Welcome back to this episode of the Ink, Pray, Love podcast. Today, we got something special for you. We have a conscious CEO, a money mentor, an astrologer, and I want this episode to be super practical for everybody so you can use astrology in your life and use the massive benefits that it can have in it. So this is for you, and if you do find value in it, please share it with people that would also find value in it. We do this for free. We're both showing up here for you as a gift so we can level up your life and make it a little bit more magical, a little bit more entertaining, fun, make it a little bit more wiser, smarter, and just all the good stuff. So we're doing this for you. So do something for us, please, and share it. And that's doing something for somebody else as well. So big love. And thank you, Natalia Benson, for coming in today and giving us your time and wisdom and energy and all the magic that you have. And why don't you drop it down? Who are you?
Yeah, let's talk about it. Your shirt is like giving me life. Like you guys, right? Aren is wearing a shirt with hearts, and it's like such a great color for you. Anyways, I love it. So
it also shrunk, and I've been working out, so it's really tight.
I'm feeling myself today.
It's shrunk in the wash.
I love it. It looks great. Well, it's so good to be here. I mean, just a little bit about me. Just like you said, I'm a conscious CEO. I'm a business mentor. I work within the space of financial empowerment. Mainly work with women, and everything for me is rooted in the framework of astrology. So when I really stepped onto my spiritual path, so to speak, I got really into astrology and really into tarot. And over the years, especially because I just had so much fear around money, started my first business at 19, had it for 9 years, never made over $30,000 in a year. And that was probably a good year because I just had so much fear around finances and I was afraid to sell, afraid to be seen. And so fast forward, when I turned about 31, I was like, I'm really tired of this and it's just time. And in typical Aries fashion, I just went all out and I really applied myself to learn what I needed to learn. And the main tool that I learned was money management. But then of course I never left behind my super esoteric, mystical roots in astrology and tarot. And it's just been very interesting just how I brought everything together. I never thought this was going to be, what I do, but my biggest passion is just supporting anyone. Women may seem to be the most drawn to my work, but really supporting anyone who just wants to feel more financially equipped to live life on their terms, and then also understand themselves and see that money and business, they don't have to be this one size fits all cookie cutter. I think that they get to align with our unique dharma, our unique energetic as a human being and as a soul. So that's a little bit about me. I live in Laguna Beach. I'm married. I have a dog named Taro, all the goods.
That's adorable. I love a dog named Taro.
She's my soulmate.
Super cute. Yeah, I love all of that. And I love your vibe. You do the girl boss thing really damn well. Like, I love seeing it. I just love that. It's so empowering and it's a vibe and you make it fun. So when I saw your Hella linked us, Hella Weston, shout out to Hella. She's our homies. And that was just like, oh yeah, of course. Like just it's an instant yes, of course.
Absolutely. So I felt about you too. We were just like, I was like, we're going to be friends. We're going to be
definitely
friends.
Instant friendship. I love that about the internet. That you're like, oh, this person's great. I'll be friends with them. Random internet friends. Fun. They had this quote and I love it, was like, millionaires don't believe in astrology. Billionaires do. And I'm like, oh, yes. That's fire.
So good.
Where's the link in astrology? And first of all, let's debunk people who don't believe in astrology. We'll jump into that one. But first, people who don't believe in astrology, what would you say to them?
Well, astrology isn't a belief system. So it really is about what you want to pay attention to. And for some people, it just doesn't resonate. Maybe they like more concrete, which ironically astrology is, but it is very experiential. I remember I was working in a juice bar in Hollywood. I was about 22, and that was my thing. I considered myself, and I use this term just in a silly way, but I considered myself like a social scientist. So every person that bought a juice or supplements or whatever at this juice bar, I'd ask them their astrology, and I was just wanted to talk and get to know them. And I remember this guy was buying supplements, and I was like, "What's your birthday?" And he goes, "You don't believe in astrology, do you?" Like scoffing. And I go, "Are you a Virgo?" And he goes, "Yeah." I'm like, and he actually was. And I just was like, and I remember the look on his face was so great. And I was like, yeah, so here's the thing, like astrology, it either resonates or it doesn't, but it is not a belief system. It's not something to, I'd say, believe in or not believe in. It's just, do you resonate with it? And for me, it is just proven. I've been a student of astrology since I was about 22. As I mentioned, I left out this detail, but when I discovered astrology, I was also heavily addicted to drugs. And ironically and beautifully, over the years, understanding myself through the framework and the blueprint of my natal chart, I think where people get a little bit off base with astrology is they think astrology is horoscopes. And if astrology were a pie, horoscopes would be the tiniest piece of the pie. There is so much in the system, and it's really based on the natal chart. And it's really based on looking at, I'd say, the chart of a person, the chart of a business, the chart of a potential event. And it just gives us like a language uh, to look at. So it's like, okay, you don't have to believe in it. Like you don't need to believe in French for French to be a language. So astrology is kind of the same thing. Like it is a language and you don't need to believe in it in order for it to be true. It's more if it's a resonance and it's something you want to learn and you want to understand.
I love that. That's great. And what I say to people who are like, I don't know about astrology, I'm like, well, okay, do you believe the moon affects the tides on the
Yes.
earth?
Yes.
That's the first thing I say. And they're like, yeah, okay. That also does affect, women's menstrual cycles. That's a thing. Okay. So there's
Absolutely.
gravity. Gravity is a thing. We can agree on gravity. Okay, cool.
Yes.
We can agree that the sun has a gravitational pull and we revolve around it because of its gravity.
Yeah.
And the moon is
Everything
cool.
we're doing right now is because of the sun. Everything.
Exactly.
We wouldn't be able to have this conversation, technology, nothing without a planet that is however many billions of miles away has an impact on us. It's powerful.
Exactly. So they're super powerful. Now think of these other celestial bodies, or what do you call them? The planets, stars, objects,
Planets,
all these things
asteroids,
out there.
yeah.
All that stuff has gravity and it will then affect us. And so it's like, okay, that we can agree on. So then can we agree on also where that was at the time of your birth would affect you? And that's where people are like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, maybe. But then when I look at, okay, I'm an Aries, you're an Aries, and we think about like our personality types, and I'm like, well, story does check out. When they say those things, I'm like, I'm pretty much that thing. I get it. Yeah, that's
yes.
me. I very go, shoot first, aim later, very stubborn, like, good and bad ways, right? Of course.
Yes.
When we look at that, practically for people, so if we're like, okay, I'm not people who aren't super into astrology, but okay, if you maybe resonated with some things that were helpful for you, so you can use it as a skill, and that could maybe make your life better. What would you start off with for people to be like, okay, I want to try to use this. I'm going to try to resonate.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's something, the way that I like to teach and share astrology is that it can be a tool for self-empowerment, self-awareness, and self-compassion. And when we are in deeper, let's say, resonance or acceptance, awareness with ourselves, we tend to give that grace to other people. When we're not is usually when we are, let's say, resistant or judgmental. And it doesn't mean you study astrology or you get to know yourself and you're all of a sudden a saint, but it does give you this deeper relationship to who you are. And I like to look at it, and this is going to sound kind of funny. I was like a video game obsessed when I was little. So I make Sega Genesis references. I know.
Like Sonic, RoboCop.
Yeah, really, really crazy. But
Uh-huh.
I remember there were like these cheat codes and you could put like a cheat code in and like beat the level. Well, in a way, astrology, while I don't want to necessarily use the word cheat because there is absolute work involved, but when you understand yourself and you understand your blueprint, which is essentially what astrology is reflecting, it's the soul blueprint. You don't build a house without a blueprint. Well, the idea is you don't build a life either without a blueprint. And so for someone who maybe is like, I'm not really into it, but I could be curious, I would say get to know your sun sign, get to know your ascendant, and get to know your moon. Those are like your big three, and they just help you have a deeper understanding of yourself and your basic personality. Your sun is like the sort of like the lens that you view reality through, and also the way that you engage with people and that you engage with the vitality of your own life. I always say if you're ever feeling lost, if you feel stuck, activate your sun sign. So if you're a sun in Aries or a sun in Gemini or a sun in Cancer, and let's say you're in the ninth house, which is a house known for travel, learning, mind expansion, higher education. For you, if you ever feel lost, the idea is to look at the qualities, the positive, empowering qualities of your sun sign. And then what area of life are you meant to shine? What area of your life are you meant to kickstart your energy, so to speak? And for this person, that would be in the realm of travel, in the realm of study, in the realm of um, just deeper wisdom. Spirituality is also covered in the ninth house, and your own version of spirituality. So, not anything that someone tells you, but rather what you create yourself. So, the ascendant is the next piece. And your ascendant is actually what's known in traditional astrology as your social personality. This can be also really helpful. Like, if for some reason you feel a lack of confidence when you are in a high pressure situation, for some of us, a high pressure situation could be going to a party. For some of us, it could be speaking in front of 50,000 people. It's like, it depends our level of, what kind of pressure we're available for. But your ascendant helps you understand how you function in outward facing situations in your life. And this is a big benefit because we are social creatures. And unless you live in a monastery or you are just like, not having to do a lot of interactions with the world in order for your livelihood and survival, then it is very, very important that we understand how we engage with people. And if we ever find like, oh man, I really turn people off, or I feel really not confident in certain situations, I would get to know your ascendant, because your ascendant is what you're projecting. And when people try to debunk astrology, which I don't get that anymore, I feel like people are much more into it now. But I remember, especially when I was younger and I would talk about it, people would be like, well, guess my sign. And I would be like, well, I will likely guess your ascendant because that's what you're showing me. I don't know you very, very well, but
Wait, what's the ascendant? Sorry to cut you off.
it's okay. It's your
Okay,
rising
yeah.
sign. It's your
Yeah,
rising
okay, great.
sign.
Mhm,
It's the moment you were born. It
mhm,
is the sign that is ascending or rising on the eastern horizon. So
mhm,
if you're at the center of your chart, your ascendant is the zodiac sign in, like, let's say the great wheel that is
mhm.
ascending on the eastern horizon. So that's what the rising sign is.
Okay, and then we got the
Yes.
sun, we got the moon. Those top three are like the top three,
Yes.
but then there's also a whole lot else going on.
There's a lot going on. And the moon is your emotional personality. So it can literally be like how you function in intimate relationships, how you function alone. If you're struggling with just being alone with yourself, or you're having issues in interpersonal dynamics, your love life, friendships, work relationships, things of this nature, it's really important to understand what you need emotionally to feel safe as a human being. And your moon sign reflects that.
Oh, okay. So outward facing, I'm a Libra. In relationships, I'm very Scorpio. And then
Yes.
then the sun, Aries, what does that get reflected in?
So, it's actually really beautiful. So, I'm always reading about astrology. I actually
Hmm.
just am rereading a book that I've had for a long time called The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need. If anybody wants to find a very in depth astrology book, but Joanne Martine Woolfolk, she actually says that our personality is largely made up of a unique synergy of our sun sign and our ascendant. So we'll kind of blend those two things and it'll easily either be something that really works harmonically or there's kind of a little bit of friction. For you having an Aries sun, that means you function and the way you move through your life is very Aries. It's Mars ruled, it's action oriented, it's warrior. It's like, get out of my way, like with love, obviously. And obviously you've done a lot of work on yourself. You have evolved a lot in your lifetime. And then what's interesting is your ascendant is Libra, which is opposing your sun. They're complete opposites in astrology. And so what can happen there, which is really fascinating, is the way you present or the way maybe someone would see you. They're kind of like, I wouldn't guess he's an Aries. I would think he's more of a Libra. But what people don't often make about Libras is that even though they're known for social dynamics and harmony and keeping the peace, whereas Aries is more of this warlike intensity, Librans are also very they are very intense people. We're on the same axis. It's just a different dynamic of intensity. So without going too much into that, let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else, because
Yeah.
I can go on and on about this. That's how astrology is. You can go really
Yeah,
deep.
it goes deep. It's just funny because I've been called Mr. Intense by a few people. It can be a little intense in like good ways, but also it's a lot. I get it.
I hear you. I'm the
But
same.
yeah, yeah, that's why we get along so well. In that, so for people that say they're going to make a business decision or say
Yes.
they're going to get into a relationship, because often people think, okay, a business relationship or a romantic relationship or even their friendships, they're always like, wait, let's check our cosign or our pattern app and all
Oh,
these cool
cute.
astrology apps there
Yes.
now, right?
I love
So
it.
people do that. That's a thing. Yeah, what do you recommend for people that are like, how do we use astrology to make better decisions?
I love this. I mean, so basically, something, and I want to just reiterate this again, but something that is really prolific and special about astrology is that we can look at our natal chart as that blueprint. So let's say you want to get into a business partnership. I would say look at your seventh house. And what you would look at with your seventh house, I'm not talking planets, and you guys are like, yeah, that's okay. We wouldn't know what that is anyway, but we want to look at the signs and
I'm trying to buy one house. What do you mean my seventh
yeah,
house?
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, your seventh house in astrology, it actually rules partnerships, contractual relationships, and marriages, just the way that we relate to people one to one. And what's really important to understand about this house is what you need and also what is important for you in terms of the way you partner. So your seventh house can reveal the type of marriage partner that's important for you. It doesn't mean that person needs to be that sign or your business partner needs to be the sign that's there. It will need to be the feeling of the relationship. Like I'll use mine for example. I have a Capricorn ascendant and Cancer is the cusp of my seventh house is as it's known. And essentially, for me, business partnerships, my marriage, like intimate dynamics, they need to feel very Cancer. They need to feel very emotionally safe and emotionally connected and stable. So, what you can do is taking a look at that seventh house, you can just see in your blueprint what is a value for you or what is important for you in terms of the way you navigate those kinds of relationships. Your seventh house can also help you understand how you make decisions as well, because Libra, the quality of Libra, it's the scales, it's justice, it's balance, and and Libra rules the intellect. It's an air sign, it's cardinal air. And we can look there and see, we can get to know the sign or the signs that either rule or traverse that house. And it gives us insight how we make decisions, how is best for us to partner, what we need in terms of our interpersonal relationships, our contractual relationships, our marriage or marriages. So this gives us some insight in terms of looking at the zodiac sign and the characteristics there.
Super interesting. So it's something that would really be well to look into it. Is this something that you use in your like money mentorship, like in your practice of money mentorship, business coaching, and on
all
that
of
end?
it.
Yeah. Do you have like a system that you break people down through? Like, how does it work for you?
Yeah. So like when I begin with clients, like let's say like my high level business mentorship clients, the first thing I do is I get to know their entire chart. And the main thing that I like to look for, especially if let's say it's within business, but inevitably in business coaching, people always need to talk about other things because your health is your business, your relationships to your business, your relationship to your spirit is your business. Everything is connected. But where I'll begin is I look at their second house traverse, their sixth house, their 10th house. And this gives me a really, really nice view of their blueprint in terms of how is best for them to make money and activate money. How is best, what is their work style? And then also what is their blueprint in terms of who they are as an entrepreneur. I also look at their Venus placement. I look at their Jupiter placement. I look at their Mars placement. And this just gives me a really nice picture. And then of course, their North Node, which I think talking about the North Node could be fascinating for your people because it's one of the coolest, most powerful points in the chart, in my opinion.
All right. Well, let's go into it. Let's hear about it. Come on, bring it.
Okay, so the North Node is really I have a little joke that a few people think is funny if they know astrology, but I always say that if I only taught you about your North Node, that would be it. I could almost only speak about it. And other astrologers may be like, no, 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 no. But for me, and the way that I guide with my style of astrological readings and the way that I teach, the nodal points are so prolific because when we understand our nodes, and I'm happy to like share what those are exactly, but when we understand the nodes in the chart, we immediately get the full picture of our purpose. And most people want to know their purpose. They want to know what habits or behaviors they need to leave behind or what they need to tap into to help them be the most effective in their life. And, you know, I am an esoteric astrologer, so I do my best to make it as relatable, of course, as possible, but I really look at the chart as a view of the soul's intentionality. And I think that we miss a lot when we only think of ourselves as a mind and a body, and we forget that the soul is a very important part of each and every incarnation. And so with the North Node, we can look to that and be like, okay, my North Node is placed in Capricorn in the 12th house, which means my South Node is found in the opposite sign and opposite house because the nodes are always 180 degrees apart from one another. In Vedic astrology, I don't remember the exact names, but they also have a name and a very, very powerful and important point in Vedic readings where they talk about essentially what is the North and South Node in the Western system. And with understanding your North Node and embodying it, you are naturally creating balance and effectiveness in your life. But it's not always easy because for most of us, and here's the thing, this is all naturally going on. You don't need to try to do this. It's helpful to be intentional, but we have nodal returns and nodal oppositions throughout our entire life. So whether you're aware of it or not, this is in effect in your life, and you will get certain, let's say, chapters or seasons of your life at very specific ages where you may notice like, oh my God, I had what felt like a fated check-in where I needed to get back on my path and I needed to make some big changes. And I don't recall the exact number. I could look it up and get it back to you, Aaron, if anyone would be interested. But I believe we have like 2 or 3 nodal returns in our life. And then I believe 2 nodal oppositions in our life, depending on the span of our lifetime. So the nodes are a very active part of our life experience, and they help us be purposeful and intentional and ultimately create a fulfilling life. Because when we're back in our south node and we're in a comfort zone, or we're doing habits, or we're kind of resting on our laurels, well, we just know that like from just a I don't know, a typical perspective, that usually doesn't get us the new results or the things that we really want if we're doing the same things. And so that's really what the nodes help us do, is move forward and create something new and effective.
I totally get that. Like when a season changes and you're like, oh, this is like a hectic season, but then the growth comes out of it. Like you're like,
Yes.
okay, like I can always tell where there's like something's different in the air. But I started looking at that after getting out of my addiction. And that was another thing that I wanted to ask you about. I was like, well, maybe it's an Aries thing because we're so all in or nothing, and that's like can be kind of addictive. Where I'm like, I want all of it, I want everything, I want it now, and it's the only thing I'm thinking about. You know, and it helps in business, it helps in other ways because I like get shit done. But then in the other way, when it's like not pointed in the right direction, it will be like drugs, and it's like not good.
Well,
So,
and I'll this is probably a little bit controversial, but I have noticed over the years, and someone who has healed from a drug addiction, I definitely have noticed, based on, let's say, more elements or signs, people's drugs of choice. And so often for
ooh,
Aries, it would be more like drugs that create more control and intensity, like methamphetamines or cocaine. And of course, that's not a universal blanket
yeah.
or medical statement, but just over the years and healing myself from this, I just would notice like, oh, someone with like a lot of water, or very like watery placements in their charts, and the things they would get addicted to, more addicted to, more things like that would help them escape, not control. Whereas for Aries, it would be more in that energy of, I want to control, I want more intensity. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. But I
Wow.
believe that addiction is just a search for something greater. And Neptune in the chart actually has 2 octaves. It's either like addiction or spirituality and God. So, or
Wow.
the subconscious, depending on what you believe in. So there are 2 octaves of the exact same planet. It's either like we're in that lower octave of addiction and escapism of any kind. It doesn't have to be to drugs. It could be addiction to anything. It could be addiction to reading fiction novels and just needing to escape. Whereas when we're looking to transmute that energy, we're actually looking for something deeper, and it can be found in the awareness of ourselves, as whether it be divinity or our subconscious habits, things of this nature. So
I
that's in the chart too.
100% agree. I agree deeply. It's funny when you say the addiction to fiction novels. My mom's a librarian. I always bug her about reading like dirty, romantic, you know, like Fabio, cowboy, you know,
Yeah.
like book
Total
porn. And
Neptune
I'm like,
moment.
you're
Oh my
addicted to
God.
book porn, mom. My mom was like, it was super funny. I
Your mom
actually,
is like, thanks for calling me out. I appreciate you. That is
yo,
so funny.
that's not even the worst of it. She retired and had a retirement party. She was a librarian, community librarian for 40 years,
So beautiful.
and I roasted her savagely at her retirement party. And I flew in from, just did a Vipassana in Sri Lanka with my boys, and flew in just for her retirement party. Came through. I rehearsed this speech I was going to give, like in the Vipassana. Obviously, I'm like kind of a like cheater in that sense. I was like, I'm going
You
to
had
write the
some
speech on
time.
it.
Yeah. You're
And I
like,
had
I
some
can think
time, so
about
like
this.
I was on it. I'm writing this great speech when you're like, you know, alone in your room. And I roasted her about, you know, she's into the book porn in front of all her friends. It was super funny. It was good. It
Oh
was
my
good.
God. She's like, thank
Savage.
you, Aries sun. She's like,
Yep.
appreciate your candidness. That's another Aries quality.
Totally. And then no, but that the other end of it, you know, with my addiction, and just not just when it was drugs, but you know, money, power, sex, validation, whatever, all the
Yeah.
gamut, food, sweets, just
Yeah.
all the things that were like as soon as I was connected to a higher consciousness, a space of oneness, God, whatever you want to call it, that stuff didn't have a grip on me as much as it used to. And I feel like
Absolutely.
you got into astrology and spirituality after your addiction around that time too. There's a direct
Yes.
correlation there. It's like, well,
Absolutely.
this is an antidote. So if you don't believe in esoterics and you're like, man, it's all fluffy bullshit, but it could be useful to you to
Absolutely.
get through, not be addicted to things that are lower level vibration, addictions. You can use this stuff as a tool
Yeah.
to feel better, vibrate better. It's just a
Yes.
better method of operating. So I believe that's a direct correlation in that. The control
That's so
aspect,
cool.
definitely. I don't like
Yes.
disassociates. Like I never liked ketamine. I was like, I don't really like
No.
not feeling in control.
Yeah, totally.
It doesn't feel good.
It's a different, and it's interesting not to shift gears, but
Mhm.
my husband is like, it's interesting because he is, if I say this like from a place of just like awareness, but I am very into the esoteric. I feel like it kind of saved me because I was looking for something deeper, and I understand it's not for everyone. And what's interesting is my husband, he is a Capricorn. And if anyone even has a slight understanding of astrology, Capricorns are Saturn ruled, meaning they are all about what is real, what is tangible. Give
Mhm.
me no fluffy bullshit. Do not hippy dippy me. They're very just like, they could be known as like realists. But what's interesting is my husband, he has what's known as a stellium in the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of spirituality, the subconscious, death, escapism. In mundane astrology, it's known as for hospitals or places of isolation. And interestingly, not to get too tactical about the astrology, I don't want to lose anyone, but there's a really beautiful point with this. When he started to have a very potent transit, he essentially got diagnosed with one of the rarest forms of bone cancer. And at the time, he was training for the Olympics. He was like seeded number one, and he was going to go to the Olympics for Bosnia, which is where he's from, but he was going to school in Arizona. And he was training intensely in his body, not eating well. They, as an athlete, and I don't know if you've experienced, you look like an athlete. I don't know if you've experienced this, but they overtrain you, and
Mm.
and basically his body just completely gave out. And his doctor was like, it's 1 in 500, 1 in 5,500,000, some minute chance it is this bone cancer. Well, it was.
Whoa.
And Mick had to stay in the hospital. I'm sorry, he had to go into treatment and stay in the hospital and do chemotherapy, radiation for an entire year. And what's
Whoa.
interesting, and he said every night he dreamt he was dying. And basically, what ended up occurring is he was given a book called The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. And he was also given a subconscious, health and healing subconscious tape, which he listened to every single day he did treatment, every single day. And when Mick and I met, the reason we could connect is because he was open to this stuff. Like, he wasn't looking at me and being like, you're full of shit. Like, he was just like, I'm open, because the experience he had had was so grave. And he says, these are his words. He's like, I know if I didn't connect to my own subconscious and I didn't connect to my own version of what my soul was. He's not esoteric. He never likes when I talk about past lives. He thinks it's weird, but it's like, he had to find his own version of spirituality. He had to find his own version of healing himself at a deep level. And ironically, as all of this was happening, Pluto, which is a planet of death and transformation, was hitting all of the planets in his 12th house. So the way I saw that is I was like, Mick, this was an era of your life where you needed to wake up to this deeper part of yourself. And it was creating an opposition in his 6th house of health. And through this health crisis, he was able to essentially wake up and help himself heal at this deep level within the subconscious. And so he's here. He went past the 5-year remission, because they say if you move past that 5-year mark, you're essentially in the clear. So I share this just as an example of someone who was not available to this, was just completely oriented with their body, but looking at their chart. And while nobody needs to freak out that their placements need to mean anything like that, but essentially it can express in these ways. And I believe so strongly that we get these opportunities to deepen. We get these opportunities, if we're fortunate, to understand ourselves on a more multidimensional level, meaning we're not just a mind and a body. There is an energy that animates us, and you can call it whatever you want. And so it's interesting because now, here Mick and I are, and we've been married for a year, but I recognize, and he's like, at our wedding, in our vows, he goes, I believe in astrology now, because Natalia, I've just been so with it. And he's been with me for quite a few years. And he's just like, he just, his Capricorn left brain self is like, it's just quite undeniable. And then obviously the piece of like him getting sick and healing through the subconscious, it's all in his chart. So I've helped him see that. It's pretty powerful.
That is an amazing story. That's so
crazy.
Cool.
I know, it's wild.
That's so cool. I love hearing that. Those cataclysmic life points and then what they mean in our charts, and people can predict them, in the future. And I've always seen that, with, like the Saturn's return. We were mentioning that Saturn's return. That's been massive for me, because that's when I got out of the dope game, left addiction, moved to Bali, started businesses, was in a sword fight black magic robbery, got out of that, found meditation. And then that was like the end. That during that Saturn's return era was intense.
We need to look at your astrocartography with Bali as well. That's actually a super interesting thing to look at, an astrocartography chart. That. So I don't specialize this or anything, but it's very easy to access your astrocartography. It's on astro.com. It's under free horoscopes, and you just pull up a map under AstroClick Travel. Go to any country in the world. You have to have your birth information input, but then you could go to Bali, click Bali, and see what kind of planets. I'd actually love to do that, because your journey with Bali is so interesting. So we'll talk after this and I'll look at your chart. But if anyone's interested, like they want to move or they're looking at going on a trip. Now, you don't need to have your whole life by your astrocartography, but it is very interesting. And it's essentially the idea that through your own natal chart, based on your planetary placements, there are certain, I wouldn't necessarily call them ley lines, but there's sort of like lines of planetary energy for you throughout the world. And you can just see like, okay, if I go to Bali, there's a Pluto line there for me. I'm probably going to have some really deep transformative experiences there. If I move to Arizona or Texas, there's a Mars line crossing Venus for me. And then we, as an astrologer, we look at the planetary, essentially what those planets represent, and we could guesstimate what could be an experience for you there. But I don't do predictive astrology. I believe we're living, like, yes, there are definitely opportunities and there can be things that are known as quote unquote fate, but I believe so strongly that we have free will. We create our lives. And as I mentioned, octaves, like with Neptune, there's an octave of addiction, there's an octave of self-awareness and soul. Well, there are lower and higher octaves of every single planet in astrology. So depending on the way you're working with yourself, taking care of yourself, working with your own awareness, moving through the challenges and the opportunities of your life, you create your luck. You create your movement and how you function and interact with planetary energy, but it's not to be an end all be all. It's really to be there as a guidance. And I'm not naive to think everyone thinks that way, but that is the way that I've learned and the way I've taught myself. And it's the way that I teach, because I think telling anyone that they have this fatalistic thing or this very specific opportunity, I think that we're creating it as we go. So astrology helps us move with awareness, and it helps us move with the awareness of potential, but it doesn't need to be so definite. I always say we have to live through we have to live our lives, and we live into placements, we live into transits. It doesn't have to be so black and white.
I love this. Yeah, that's super interesting. The astrocartography, as well as the timing, as well as what kind of people we should meet and or need or compliment us. Like this stuff is gold.
Yes.
I really appreciate that. You know, because Lucas and Hella, they were like, "Oh, Aren, you would love Miami. Miami would feel good for you." And I was like, "I'd never even thought about it, but I have so many friends there." I'm like, "Oh, Miami, interesting." But I'm being called to Portugal. Portugal seems cool. I don't know if I want to do
Interesting.
Vancouver winters. It's cold. My bones hurt.
Yeah. Are you
Yeah,
okay? Yeah.
yeah,
Especially for someone as fiery as you, like winter, deep
yeah, yeah,
winters there.
yeah. Is there a certain like the seasons for fiery people? We want to be in a hot place. They want to balance that out. Like, how does that work?
That's actually a really great question. And I'll just answer more like intuitively. But
Mm,
if you look at your chart, you have elements. So you could, let's say, look at your chart and have an intense amount of fire, very little earth, very little water, and a little bit of air, but you're mostly like very fiery. And that can express in a couple different ways. You could be someone where like you always want to be warm or you need to be cool. Like if you get overheated, you're like an asshole. You know what I mean? It's like you can actually understand just like your own temperament as well. And I know like in Ayurveda, there's like the doshas. I
mm,
look at this as well. Like when you just understand the elementals of your chart, I find most often, like if someone knows their doshas, and I have a very rudimentary understanding of this, but it's like I'll find so often that there is a tie where if you have like a heavy amount of fire in your chart, you may be a very pitta person or a very vata type
mhm,
person. Let's say you're someone who, like my mom, oh my God, she's a Capricorn and she is obsessed with being cold. Like I told her yesterday, my office was 66 degrees and I was pissed. I was like, I can't believe it was something in the building was messed up. And I'm a very fiery person. I can't stand to be cold. And she's like, that sounds like my dream. Like, let me go
yeah,
sit in a cave. So it's really
yeah,
like you can look at your chart and see
yeah,
what are the elements predominantly there. And it can help you understand what kind of climates or temperaments that you hold, where you may like to live. Tropical is it for me. Like, I like
mm,
tropical places. I live in a place with very, very easy climate, but we had a very cold winter, but I won't say it's cold because I'm a baby about cold. It's not cold, not cold compared to Vancouver, but it is
yeah,
interesting to understand your elements. And then
yeah,
another piece I'll add in really quickly is the modalities. And the modalities to me are some of the most fascinating parts of the entire chart. And they have to do with the seasons and the season that you're born. So for you, Aren, you are cardinal fire, and cardinal is the rush of spring. So I'm sorry, cardinal fire is the rush of spring. It's Aries energy. If someone is born in Virgo, that is known as mutable earth. So they are in the middle, the transition from summer into fall. And this is in the northern hemisphere, obviously. So that's another thing that you can understand about your energy. Do you have a lot of cardinal where you like to initiate, you like to start things, but you may not be great at finishing? Are you more fixed energy where you're really good at being persistent, but you may not be super balanced in terms of like starting or letting things change? I think that modalities as well are really great for leaders to understand, really, really great in team dynamics. You can get to know the elements and the modalities of the people that you work with or the people on your team. And you'll find typically, naturally, organically, people are already doing what they're really good at or what they're sort of naturally inclined to do in terms of like, are they good project initiators? And usually people who head things, they are cardinal energy. I won't say always, but they'll often be cardinal energy because they're very, very good at like, I'm going to spark this. And then, hey, I need the people on my team with a lot of fixed energy to help me actually see it through and implement the project, things of this
mm.
nature. So yeah, modalities are fascinating to understand too.
on point, really, because I saw that. Like, I love starting things very fiery. I love starting things. So I'm like, I'm not a good manager. I like to find for somebody who's more analytical, persistent manager type. Like, I don't want to be
Yes.
like on people's ass for showing up on time, and
Yes.
just like the checking. I'm like, oh, can someone do that part? I just want to start
Yes.
fires. I'll start the fire. I'm not getting
Exactly.
wood.
Yeah,
I'll keep it. Like,
exactly.
I don't want.
Exactly.
It's not my
Yeah,
thing,
you'll
right?
find usually that it's already, like I said, organically, naturally occurring.
I love that. And, with people getting into it, I really want to focus a little bit more on the money mentorship part as well,
Yeah.
because I think that's really useful for people as well. Getting into this, everyone wants to accumulate wealth. Everybody wants to get into
Mhm.
that. And I think that's an important subject for people to get into, as well as, yeah, well, what do you baseline? Okay, you get through their astrology first, you get their charts. Then what else do you look at to help someone build some wealth?
Yeah, so there's a few things. So first, you can look to your Venus placement in terms of an area of life or a way for you to create or make money. The Venus placement's a very creative placement in the chart, and it does traditionally represent money, value, and also receptivity. Because if we want to make money, not only do we need to be good at making it, but we need to be good at receiving it. It's one thing to be able to make money, but do you actually allow yourself to receive it, to hold it? Do you feel worthy to hold wealth? Do you feel worthy to hold higher levels of income? So your Venus placement is really helpful in that way. If you want to look at like long-term discipline and how to really like create something and sustain it over time, whether it's wealth, a business, you look at your Saturn placement, and your Saturn placement also helps you understand where you get off balance with your discipline or where you need to work on discipline. So your Venus placement is the way that you make money. Saturn can be the way that you hold and keep or build for the long haul, which is very important with wealth building. Your Jupiter placement is always really interesting to look at because your Jupiter placement it's like a gift placement. It's known as a benefic in astrology. So it's kind of like a space where you are meant to embody and hold a lot of energy in that area of your life. And it's a place that you can not only dispel your gifts and share, but also receive. And it's really interesting because many people, it's been fascinating recently. I've happened to have read some charts for just some very high power people, and they have this conjunction in their chart, Jupiter conjunct Venus. And what's interesting about that conjunction is that it's the idea of gifts and money going together, and Jupiter creates ease where whatever it touches in your life. And we all have a Jupiter placement, which is really exciting. But what's interesting is when Jupiter and Venus are together, they tend to create this ease of money or this ease of accessibility to resources or whatever it may be. Another interesting place to look for money is the second house. And I always tell people, like, don't worry if you don't have anything in your second house. It's not the end of the world. There's no such thing as an empty house in astrology. So what you can look at with your second house is the signs that are traversing and ruling that house. And you can again see what are the ways that you can make money? What energy do you need to embody and step into in your life, in your work? Um, in your purpose to activate this area of your life, your second house, because the second house represents money. It's ruled by Taurus. So I'll leave that right there. But those are
Mm-hmm.
like a couple important, not only planetary placements, but also the house traverse that you can look at in terms of like money and wealth building.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's very informative. I think people get some value out of that. I
Yes, I
wanted to
hope
also
so.
shout out your DJing, because people, you got dope playlists. You sent me a really good one, and I think
Thank
people
you.
definitely need to link up with you and jump on some of your Spotify and listen to your music, and hopefully go see
Oh,
you play. Like, you have good music.
thank you. Thank
How
you
do they
so
find you?
much. Yeah, well, on Spotify, it's just called Ninth Child. a project that I was very serious about for about 5 years. And then I now make music. I still will put things out. I just did a show, but it's funny. I just finished that show and I was like, oh my God, I love my business so much more. I don't want to do this. I don't like being up late. Like it was a fun
Yeah.
experience, but
Yeah.
now it's fun that I get to incorporate that into the work that I do. But yeah, Ninth Child is the name of that project. And it's
We're
pretty
so
special.
funny. I don't like being up late. I'm like, me too. I'm like so funny now. I'm like, oh, it's past 10, 11. I'm like,
Oh,
I want
I
to get up early.
love going to
It's like,
bed
I love
early. I love
mornings. I
getting in
love going to
bed
bed
and
early.
reading and just
God,
like
same. Oh,
learning.
what are you reading right now?
Oh my God. I'm reading like 6 books. Like
Yeah.
I
So
just
Aries.
discovered Kindle. Yeah. I just
Yeah,
so
Kindle's dope.
Aries. I love Kindle. I'm reading a book called Astrology for the Soul by Jan Spiller. It's about the nodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned, I'm also rereading bits and pieces because the book, the only astrology book you'll ever need, is massive. So it's more of like a study material. Like you go if I want to look something up. So I'm reading that. I'm also reading a book about mediumship. I'm almost done
Cool.
with that actually because I'm excited to learn some skills and tools.
Yeah, I'm about
Interesting.
it. What's that
I'm
one
so
called?
nervous though. Like I'm such a baby about anything paranormal. So I'm like, okay, how am I gonna do this and be really, I don't know, like as clear and clean as possible. But I
Yeah,
love reading. I'm just like an audiobook listener and
me too.
reading multiple books. Like I just love to learn.
Yeah, I love that. That's my jam. I think anybody
What are you
listening to this
reading?
is about it. Right now, I'm reading Rethinking Intelligence.
Interesting.
That
Okay.
one's cool. I'm into that. And it's about shifting our idea of what IQ, going away from the IQ model and looking at all the other ways that intelligence is actually a factor. And so far, what I've
Oh,
gotten out of it is real intelligence isn't just like being able to memorize the algebra or some shit.
yes.
It's being able to be in any situation, taking in, dynamic information and being able to action it quickly
Oh,
and
I love
efficiently.
that.
I'm like, that's the
Powerful.
type of intelligence I really value as well. You can put me
Yes.
anywhere, I'll figure it out. And I like
Yes.
that intelligence. So, that's like very practical for me. So I'm liking seeing the science and mapping it out behind it, because a lot of my coaching programs, I just want to make people super capable. So you can pick
Yes.
anything you want to do, but just follow these systems of amping yourself up mentally that you can just handle anything. And
Yes.
that's my jam. I love that stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. So
I
Aries,
know.
sorry. Whenever people
Totally.
talk, I can't help myself. I'm like, yeah, that's probably your moon in this or your da da da. Yeah, I love it. That's very cool.
Astrologer problems.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much for jumping on today. Where can people find you? What do you got going on that people can come support? Lay it on us.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Aaron. This was so fun. And you're just such an epic. I can't wait till we get to hang in person.
Me too.
We'll go have a little Erewhon run next time
Yeah.
you're in LA. But so yeah, I'm at Natalia_Benson on Instagram. I have a podcast, just Natalia Benson, the podcast. I definitely focus very, very heavily. I definitely teach about astrology, but it's definitely more the focus around like entrepreneurship and like financial empowerment, as I mentioned, rooted in astrology. So if you want to come check that out, you're welcome. And I feel like your community is probably a little higher level in what they do. So I would just say the best thing is head to my website, and if there's anything that you see and ways that I could be in service and in support to you and your mission, check it out. And yeah, or just reach out to me on Instagram. I'd love to chat. And I'm super grateful. This was such a fun conversation, and I
Mhm.
hope it's a useful, because that's what
Me too.
astrology is meant to be. Is it's meant to be useful.
Absolutely. I think it absolutely was. And again, thank you so much for your time. And
Thank
everybody,
you.
please share the podcast, get Natalia's message out there. If you got value out of this, we both do it for free and we're busy people. We just want to do it to level up your guys' lives and a gift for you. So hook us up, please, and give it a share. Big, big love, homies. We'll see
Big
you on the
love.
next one.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ink Pray Love podcast. I hope you found it inspiring, entertaining, funny, and also feeling a little bit more present and connected to yourself. Please leave a review and like and subscribe and do all those things. I'd really appreciate that. As well as if you're feeling in a giving mood, this podcast is there for the charities that I love to support. Go to www.arenbaya.com/charity and get some of those good karma points. This podcast is brought to you by Lighthouse Studios in Bali, as well as Full Reset Coaching. That is my coaching practice. And if you're looking for help in business, inner game impact, and building your legacy to be something you're proud of, your brand, your business, and how you walk the earth and who you impact, and also having the mindset and the heart set to be able to be happy handling it all, I'm here for you. Just DM me. Let's go. Peace out, homies. I'll see you on the next episode.